Today we're diving into one of the most important geopolitical and technological stories that nobody's talking about. Europe's desperate race to avoid becoming what experts are calling a digital colony in the AI age. While everyone's focused on the latest ChatGPT update or which tech billionaire said what on X, there's a massive infrastructure war happening behind the scenes. The United States and China are building AI supercomputers that consume as much power as entire cities, and Europe is getting left behind. We're talking about a continental challenge that could determine whether Europe remains a global power or becomes dependent on American and Chinese technology for the next century. So what are the stakes? Analysts estimate that Europe, the Middle East, and Africa must add roughly 8 gigawatts of new AI-grade compute capacity by 2030. That translates to roughly 120 to 140 billion euros in data center investment, and they're most likely underweighting it. To put that in perspective, at that rate, AI workloads would consume up to 5% of Europe's total electricity by 2030. Individual AI data centers that cost 30 to 50 billion euros each and consume enough electricity to power nuclear reactors. But this isn't just about technology. It's about sovereignty, economic independence, and who controls the future. So today's episode breaks down Europe's urgent need for what they're calling gigawatt-scale GPU factories, why the continent is falling behind, and the massive financing challenges of building AI infrastructure that rivals the world's largest energy projects. I really enjoyed researching this deep dive into the geopolitics of artificial intelligence, and I hope you do too. So let's get right into it. Let me start with some numbers that'll completely blow your mind about just how far behind Europe has fallen in this AI infrastructure race. So in the United States, big tech companies are pouring absolutely enormous sums into AI infrastructure. Meta, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft plan to spend more than $320 billion in 2025 alone. This is on AI research and data centers. Not to mention Stargate. Check out Stargate's deep dive on our last episode. That's more than the entire GDP of most European countries. And that's just 1 year of spending from 4 companies. Meanwhile, China's executed what can only be described as a state-led blitz. Over 250 AI-focused data centers have been built or announced nationwide, all packed with high-performance GPUs and massive power capacity to fuel China's AI ambitions. When a country builds 250 specialized facilities in just a few years, you know they understand the strategic importance of this technology. So what does Europe have to show for it? Europe's largest announced AI campus is a 1.4 gigawatt GPU hub near Paris, a joint venture led by NVIDIA, UAE investors, and a French AI startup. While this project is laudable, it only comes online by 2028. Europe must close the gap with more and faster build out, but they're already years behind in a race where every month of delay matters. All right, everyone, quick word from today's sponsor, Fall AI. Fall AI is the fastest serverless platform for AI inference. Whether you're a developer building the next big app or a business looking to integrate AI into your workflow, Fall AI gives you access to the latest AI models without the headache of managing infrastructure. Here's what makes them special. Sub-second response times, support for every major AI model you can think of, from image generation to language models, and you only pay for what you use. No massive upfront costs, no server management, just pure AI power at your fingertips. If you're curious about what AI can do for your project or business, head over to Fall AI, that's FAL.ai, and see how fast AI can be when it's built right. All right, let's get back to the episode. So here's what makes this situation so critical. Advanced AI workload like generative models and machine vision for robots require vast GPU farms and data centers. These aren't your typical web servers that can run a website or handle email. We're talking about specialized facilities that pack thousands of the most powerful graphics processing units available, along with specialized cooling systems that can handle the immense heat that the chips generate. Without local high-density GPU clusters, Europe will rely on foreign cloud providers, primarily US hyperscalers like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, and hardware from companies like NVIDIA and Intel. This undermines what strategists call digital sovereignty. EU strategists emphasize building a Euro stack of homegrown data centers and chips to cut dependence. Think about this dependency for a moment. If your companies want to develop the next generation of autonomous vehicles, medical AI systems, or industrial robots, they have to rent computing time from American companies. They're essentially paying a tax to foreign corporations for access to the computational power that drives innovation. Worse, they're subject to export controls, political pressure, and potential cutoffs if geopolitical relations sour. The challenge Europe faces isn't just about building a few big data centers. Modern AI data centers pack thousands of GPUs and require specialized cooling systems, massive electrical infrastructure, and sophisticated networking. Each facility essentially becomes a factory for digital intelligence, consuming as much power as a small city while producing the computational output that enables everything from language models to robotic control systems. Europe needs to build many such GPU farms domestically to power AI research, robotics development, and maintain sovereignty over its digital future. But here's the catch. Relying only on governments and public procurement will be too slow and risky for the urgent timeline Europe faces. Let me explain why traditional government approaches won't work. New semiconductor fabs or supercomputer centers take years to plan and build, often a decade or more, which is well behind the accelerating AI race. Venture analysts note that even if the GPU fab capacity is built, the timeline to build new fabs is long, 5 to 20 years, which is far too slow for today's urgent needs. Bureaucratic programs can also misfire in ways that hurt European competitiveness. For example, UK AI chip subsidies were specified to support GPUs only, effectively excluding the homegrown GraphCore IPUs. This kind of rigid thinking has consequences. GraphCore warns that the UK's government procurement rules railroad users into GPU-centered systems, neglecting innovative European designs. We've seen similar problems across Europe. Germany's leading AI startup, Aleph Alpha, has struggled, and Europe's battery champion, Northvolt, recently went bankrupt, highlighting the weakness of EU tech ecosystems without agile support. These failures show that Europe cannot wait for Brussels. Instead, the continent needs fast-acting private consortia to resize the initiative. This is where the story gets interesting, because several European companies and investors actually have the scale and expertise to drive gigawatt GPU builds. They just need the right coordination and support. Let me walk you through some of the private champions and projects that are poised to lead this transformation. Bulk Infrastructure in Norway operates a renewable powered campus with 400 megawatts secured, expandable to 1 full gigawatt. This isn't theoretical capacity. They recently hosted one of Europe's largest NVIDIA GPU clusters, proving they can handle the technological and logistical challenges of massive AI infrastructure. The UK's largest cloud and data center firms, including companies like Vantage, Nscale, and Kyndryl, have already pledged billions to UK AI data center zones. These aren't startups making promises. These are established infrastructure companies with proven track records and access to capital markets. French cloud giant OVH Cloud similarly runs European GPU accelerated cloud offerings and could scale up GPU farms. They understand both the technical requirements and the European regulatory environment, giving them advantages over American competitors trying to operate in Europe. On the chip side, it's going to be hard to avoid NVIDIA, but European startups like GraphCore in the UK and Mistral AI in France are developing AI accelerators and models. Mistral AI is even a partner in the planned 1.4 megawatt Paris AI campus, showing how European AI companies can participate in the infrastructure build-out rather than just consuming it. Perhaps most importantly, global infrastructure investors are mobilizing around European AI infrastructure. Apollo Management agreed to acquire 7 European co-located data centers spanning Stockholm, Oslo, Copenhagen, Milan, and Geneva as a single platform. Brookfield and similar infrastructure funds are eyeing European data hubs as long-term investments. This creates an interesting constellation of players. A small set of private entities from hyperscale cloud builders like Bulk, OVH Cloud, and Vantage, to AI firms like GraphCore and Mistral, to infrastructure funds like Apollo and Brookfield, could realistically assemble and operate the first European GPU gigafactories. So what should governments do to enable this private sector build-out? The key insights is that governments should pave the way but not try to run the factories themselves. They have 3 critical roles to play. First, fast-track permitting in zones. The UK government has proposed AI growth zones to speed up data center approvals and grid access. Such policies, including fast environmental impact assessments and grid hookups, are essential for moving at the speed the industry requires. In a global race where competitors are moving in months rather than years, regulatory delays can be fatal to European competitiveness. Second, power agreements. AI data centers need enormous amounts of reliable electricity. Governments should enable dedicated energy supply through long-term power purchase agreements with renewables or new nuclear facilities. Major tech players already use these agreements at scale. Amazon, for example, has backed more than 500 clean energy projects, generating 77,000 gigawatt hours per year to power its data centers. Europe should similarly facilitate large-scale renewable power purchase agreements or even small modular reactors near AI hubs. Third, subsidies and credit guarantees. Rather than trying to build facilities directly, governments can offer subsidies or loan guarantees to de-risk private investment. The EU's Invest AI initiative proposes a layered investment fund where public capital de-risks the investment of the other parties. The European Investment Fund and Italy's Cassa Depositi e Prestiti recently put 200 million euros into a European data center fund under InvestEU to spur private investment. Member states could similarly commit cohesion or green funds as limited partner stakes in infrastructure funds. The goal should be leveraging private speed and capital, with governments smoothing barriers and sharing risk. This approach recognizes that private companies understand the technical requirements and can move faster than government agencies, while governments can improve the policy framework, risk mitigation, and make larger investments feasible. Now let's talk about which regions should lead this build out, because geography matters enormously with AI infrastructure. Certain regions should take the lead due to their spatial strengths and natural advantages. Germany, Europe's industrial powerhouse, already has massive AI compute plans. The Jupiter Exascale supercomputer will wire 24,000 NVIDIA chips for more than 70 exaflops of computing power. Now that sounds impressive until you realize what Europe is competing against. OpenAI's Stargate facility in Texas will house around 400,000 NVIDIA GPUs. That's more than 16 times larger than Germany's flagship supercomputer. And Elon's xAI Colossus facility went live with 200,000 GPUs and plans to scale to 1 million GPUs by 2027 alone. 1 million, that's more than 40 times larger than Europe's most advanced system. This puts Europe's challenge in stark perspective. While Germany celebrates connecting 24,000 chips, individual American companies are deploying hundreds of thousands or even millions of chips in single facilities. Germany can offer high-skilled talent and industrial demand from its strong technology and automotive industries that need AI and robotic compute. Companies like BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Siemens, they all represent enormous potential customers for AI infrastructure, but the scale gap is absolutely staggering. The UK has pledged a £14 billion data center build-out and established AI growth zones. It hosts AI research hubs like Cambridge and DeepMind, along with substantial financial resources in London. The UK's strength lies in combining world-class research with access to global capital markets. But perhaps the most natural location for Europe's first gigawatt-scale GPU farm is the Nordic region. Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark are ideal for GPU farms thanks to cheap, carbon-free power and cool climates that reduce cooling costs. Data centers already flourish in Scandinavia. Microsoft is investing roughly $3.2 billion in Swedish AI data centers with 1,000 megawatts of new renewables. Norway's bulk infrastructure and others are expanding GPU-ready campuses with 100% hydropower. As analysts note, future European data centers will cluster in Scandinavia and France due to cheap renewables, or in markets like Germany and the UK with strong policy incentives. But the Nordic advantage isn't just about cheap electricity. The cool climate means these facilities require much less energy for cooling, which can account for 30 to 40% of total energy consumption in traditional data centers. When you're operating at gigawatt scale, these efficiency gains translate into hundreds of millions of euros in annual savings. Now let's talk about the concrete roadmap for getting Europe's first GPU gigafactories from concept to reality. This isn't just theoretical planning. There are specific steps that could launch 1 or 2 pilot GPU factory projects as private-public consortia within the next few years. The first step is project selection. Europe needs to identify candidate sites, such as a Nordic campus with excess renewable power and a German or UK zone with strong industrial demand. The key is gauging local energy grid capacity because these facilities will consume enormous amounts of electricity that must be available and reliable. Think about this challenge for a moment. A 1 gigawatt AI data center will consume as much electricity as a city of several 100,000 people. The electric grid infrastructure that can support this kind of load doesn't exist in most locations and takes years to build. This is why site selection becomes so critical. You need locations where either the grid capacity already exists or can be rapidly expanded. The second step is forming a partner consortium. This means creating a joint venture led by private players, including data center operators, cloud companies, and chip firms, working alongside infrastructure investors. This might bring together partners like OVH Cloud, Bulk Infrastructure, Graphcore, Minstrel AI, and funds like Apollo or Brookfield. Each participant brings different capabilities to the table. Data center operators understand the physical infrastructure requirements. Cloud companies know how to monetize compute capacity. Chip firms can ensure access to the latest hardware. Infrastructure investors provide the patient capital needed for long-term projects. The third step involves government commitments. Governments would designate sites as AI and data center zones and fast-track permits. National development banks or the European Investment Bank could provide soft loans or guarantees. Energy regulators would approve long-term renewable contracts or grid priority access. The financing structure would use a mix of equity and debt that we've seen work in other infrastructure projects. Venture or strategic equity funds can invest in the technology components like chips, cooling systems, and smart load management. Meanwhile, the bulk of construction gets financed as infrastructure through project debt with government-backed guarantees to lower interest rates. Sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, or EU programs could act as anchor limited partners in a new AI infrastructure fund, analogous to the European Investment Fund and CDP Data Center Fund that recently mobilized 200 million euros for European data centers. A practical template already exists in the EU's InvestEU mechanism, where public capital underwrites a fund that co-invests with private money. Here's why this blended financial approach is so crucial. Traditional venture capital won't work for gigawatt-scale infrastructure because the capital requirements are too large and the payback period is too long. Pure government funding won't work because it's too slow and bureaucratic. But a combination of private seed and expertise with public risk mitigation and policy support can achieve what neither could accomplish alone. By concretely bringing together venture and infrastructure finance, Europe can jumpstart its AI compute capacity. The time sensitivity cannot be overstated. Every month of delay allows American and Chinese competitors to expand their installed base of AI compute. And if you want a good example of what has been done in the US, just look to the example of Stargate and the details we outlined in the previous Stargate episode. Let me paint you a picture of what success looks like. Imagine Europe launches 2 pilot projects simultaneously, a Nordic campus powered by renewable hydroelectric and geothermal, and a German facility connected to industrial demand from automotive and manufacturing companies. Each facility comes online with hundreds of thousands of GPUs, providing European AI companies with access to cutting-edge compute without depending on American cloud providers. These facilities would serve multiple purposes simultaneously. They provide compute capacity for European AI startups to train large language models and develop robotic control systems. They'd offer European automotive companies the ability to develop autonomous driving technology without sending data to foreign servers. They'd enable European healthcare companies to develop medical AI systems while maintaining data sovereignty and regulatory compliance. But most importantly, they demonstrate that Europe can compete in the AI infrastructure race. Success with the first 2 facilities would attract additional private investment, creating a virtuous cycle where each new facility makes the next one easier to finance and build. The technical capabilities these facilities would enable are staggering. A single gigawatt AI data center with hundreds of thousands of modern GPUs could train AI models with trillions of parameters, process massive data sets for autonomous vehicle development, or run complex simulations for pharmaceutical research. This isn't just about having computational power. It's about having the computational power to remain competitive in industries that are becoming increasingly AI-driven. But here's what happens if Europe fails to move quickly on this infrastructure build-out. The consequences extend far beyond just falling behind in AI research. Europe faces the risk of permanent technological dependence that could undermine its economic sovereignty for decades. European researchers and companies would remain dependent on foreign-owned compute resources to train AI models or run advanced simulations. And the talent drain risk is equally serious. The brightest AI talent tend to go where the compute resources and funding is abundant. If Europe cannot offer comparable facilities, it risks brain drain to the US or China. We've already seen this pattern in other technology sectors. European machine learning researchers often join American labs for access to large compute clusters. Perhaps most critically, Europe could lose its competitive position in key sectors where it has traditionally been strong. Automotive, industrial machinery, aerospace, and healthcare equipment are all rapidly integrating AI and robotics. Without local AI capacity, Europe firms in these domains will fall behind. The window for action is open now, but narrowing very rapidly. As experts put it, Europe still has time to act, but that window is closing fast. Every year of delay means the installed base of AI compute in the US and China grows by millions of GPUs, and their AI models learn and improve faster, creating a compounding advantage that becomes harder to overcome. But here's the encouraging news. The pieces are falling into place for Europe to mount a serious response. The EU's €200 billion digital sovereignty plan provides a policy framework. National projects in France, Germany's semiconductor investments, the UK's AI compute initiatives, and Nordic green data center expansion all point in the right direction. These efforts now need to be scaled up and coordinated into an overarching mission. The investment required is large but manageable for an economic bloc of Europe's size and wealth. When we talk about 120 to 140 billion euros over 6 years for the entire Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, that's roughly 20 to 25 billion euros per year. For comparison, that's less than what the 4 largest American tech companies plan to spend just in 2025. Europe has the financial resources, technical expertise, and industrial demand to support this infrastructure build-out. What's needed is the political will and coordination to move quickly enough to remain competitive. The creation of Airbus in the aerospace industry provides a perfect historical precedent. Through political will and pooling of expertise, Europe competed successfully in a high-tech field once thought dominated by American companies. The same approach can be worked out with AI hardware and infrastructure. This isn't about isolating Europe from global technology networks. It's about ensuring Europe can participate in an equal partner rather than a dependent client. The message from industry and analysts and political leaders is consistent. Europe's last best chance to avoid becoming a digital colony is to build comprehensive digital infrastructure, chips, data centers, and AI compute, starting immediately. The technical challenge is significant but solvable. Building gigawatt-scale data centers with hundreds of thousands of GPUs, reliable renewable energy supply, and sophisticated cooling systems requires coordination across multiple industries and countries, but Europe has the engineering expertise, financial resources, and industrial base to accomplish this infrastructure build-out. The financing challenge is manageable through creative public-private partnerships that leverage Europe's deep capital markets and policy banking. The example we discussed today, from Apollo's infrastructure investment to the Nordics' renewable energy advantages to the EU's Invest AI program, show that the financial tooling and institutional frameworks already exist. More European AI gigafactories should break ground this decade, ensure Europe's innovation and strategic sectors have the computational power they need to compete in the thriving AI-driven world. All right, everyone, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. The best thing you can do for the podcast is to share it with one other person. And if you're looking for additional, more in-depth content, subscribe to Cognition Curve newsletter on Substack, or you can follow me on X at Ralph Maker. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.